Residence Journal's coverage of the Candidates' plan to tackle the high school dropout rate in the public school system and for economic advancement of African Americans at the Chicago Defenders Mayoral Forum at the DuSable Museum on February 9th, 2011.
Dropout rate in Chicago public schools, and this is for everybody.
I'll let each one of you handle that.
Okay.
Go ahead and get started, Mr. Chico.
Obviously, it's an excellent question. This is the challenge of our time, to educate all of our children throughout the city with an opportunity for a solid education. I believe it's the root of the problem starts at the earliest of ages, which is why I've suggested that we have the largest network of preschools that we've ever had in our city. To start at the age of 3, to get to children as early as possible, to keep them on the right path. Then I've argued for, thank you. Then I've argued for a longer school day and a longer school year. If we spend more time engaged with our students during the day, teaching them subjects, providing recess, music, and art, these are things that would engage our students and not let them drift away and would keep them in the school. And I think the more time we would spend teaching, more hours in the day, more hours in the year, would mean that our students would do better and feel better about themselves. I think we're also going to have to have much more effective parent engagement, which is why I've called for parent resource centers in every school, so that every parent could have a place to come and have an ability to relate to the school. I've also called for a parent advocate general at the very top, so that everything we do is done through the lens of the parent, and the parent would have a place to come at the top level of the school system to give us their concerns. But we need to do that much, much better than we have. It's the issue of our time, and we can make inroads to the dropout problem. But I think you have to approach it this way.
Mr. Manuel?
First of all, I think you need a comprehensive approach to education. Because the fact is the dropout rate is a symptom of a failure on pieces of the education system, which is why I say, one, and my goals are in the Chicago Public School System that every school will have a performance contract so we can measure how the principals are doing and the teachers are doing in achieving their goal, a 5-year performance. Charter schools have it. It's a successful model of measuring progress and holding the principal accountable. We talked about doubling the size of the teacher corps and making sure that the city of Chicago would have the largest population of teachers with a master's degree in education. By doubling the size of the teaching academies, which people know Chicago's the only city with it. We have 7 of them. I helped start the first high school, and it's a model for the country. Third is also about parenting. A comprehensive after-school program, and I have it fully funded, for how you make sure there's an after-school program for every kid in our public school system. And part of that opportunity is also making sure that parents pick up the report card, attend parent-teacher conferences, go over their homework, which gets parents more involved in their own kids' education. Now, as it relates to dropout, there are programs, in fact, at CPS now able to target early on which kids are going to run into trouble vis-a-vis dropout. Those programs need to be strengthened. We are able to track now early on and know by the grades of 7th and 8th grade which kids are going to lead towards dropout. And we have to be able to get them early. There's no doubt that Gary's correct. Early childhood education, as a parent, I can say this without talking about public policy, very invested in my own children's education. And the reason is because early on you teach the value of education, and why parenting is so important. And eliciting the responsibility there, the child quickly picks up whether a parent understands and it reinforces the values of education. And too long, teachers are being asked to carry this burden by themselves, and they need that partner at the home. The most important door a child walks through for education
is the
front door of the house. Thank you.
Mr. Walls?
You have to establish your approach. And we have to make certain that we're providing a superior public school education for each and every individual child. And that transcends the development of just modern buildings and state-of-the-art equipment facilities which produce a safe, potentially productive education environment. We have to do more than just warehouse our children and teach them to test. We have to provide them reading, writing, math, and science, of course. We also have to provide them civics, the humanities, history. We have to provide them arts, the music, language, technology, science. We have to teach them vocation. We have to teach our children everything that we learn. Irreproachable education, a superior public school education for each and every individual child. It starts with a commitment to having an education-first model and not a business-first model. Chicago public schools can't be about money, jobs, and contracts. It has to be about teaching children to follow their hearts, their minds, their talents, and teaching them to pursue the American dream. We have to make certain that we have one common curriculum so that children all across the Chicago public school system are learning the same thing at the same grade at the same time. We also have to make certain that we are giving attention to every child, whether they have one parent, two parents, or no parents whatsoever. Because we have 12,500 homeless students here in the city of Chicago. Those children deserve an education too. So it's our commitment to educate each and every individual child. And when you provide that not one-size-fits-all education, but the education that's intensive to that particular child, you ensure that you're defeating the dropout rate. We can't keep sending children to school across gang lines in Chicago because they're intimidated. We've got to make certain that we're committed to educating our children.
Mr. Walls, 2 minutes. Ms. Van Pelt-Hawkins.
First of all, our schools have been driven by the business community for the last 15 or so years. We have not had an educator to run the schools. So number one, we need an educator to run the schools. Number two, we need a school board that's elected so that the citizenry can be a part of educating our kids. And also, I would like to set up community councils so reform can be driven from the community up. Because I bet you if we went into any of our high schools, and he's talking about the dropout rate in high schools being 50%, in some neighborhoods it's 70%. And I bet you if you went into the classroom and we asked the kids what they wanted, all these answers you've heard up here, it wouldn't matter to them. What they're going to say is they are afraid. Fear of being shot, fear of being beat down. It's like they turn in a composition paper, they're playing Russian roulette. None of us would work in that environment. We would not go anywhere and work where we know, so we might walk past our peers' desks, they might shoot us or hit us with a bat. We wouldn't allow anybody to pay us to go in that environment. But yet we send our kids in there. And then we want to evaluate the teachers and evaluate the kids and figure out what's going on. What's going on is that the system is broken. And kids are being hung out to dry and then told to learn while the rest of the world is leaving us behind. We spend more money on education than any country in the world besides Luxembourg. And yet we are 21st and 22nd in math and science. It's a shame that we're spending all this money, we're putting all this investment in, and we're not getting anything back. We got to change the way we're approaching education, and part of that is talking to the kids, letting the youth in the high schools begin to drive some of this reform from the inside out. It's a program called Voice, and I'm a part of it, Voices of Youth in Chicago Education. They help the 11th and 12th graders, help the 9th and 10th graders stay in school. That's what we need. We need social, emotional supports. And that can happen, in many cases, right there in the school.
Ms. Van Pelt-Hawkins.
Well, I would like to hear a response from all of the candidates, so feel free to jump in. On June 14th, Crane Chicago published an article, Daily by the Numbers. And essentially it looked at the income levels, housing levels, education levels, all of the metrics that point to economic stability and advancement in the community, and looked at all the communities across Chicago. And actually the story wasn't that bad, because Chicago has, for the last 20 years, by and large, done well outside of mortgaging its assets. Many of the communities, and most of the communities, have seen increases in their various levels, income and education levels, except for the African American community. Not only has it not seen any advances, it's lost its position. So I would like to know from each of you, what would you do differently than the Daley administration to address this problem?
Let's start with Mr. Walls.
You know, the problem in the city of Chicago is we haven't decided to make certain that we have balanced economic development throughout the entire city. We're taking care of certain neighborhoods and not others, economically, physically, socially, emotionally. You know, communities are built around parks, schools, and libraries. So let's start there. Let's build strong communities here in the city of Chicago. Next thing that you have to do is ensure that everyone has an equal and fair opportunity to participate in this city, to enjoy the largesse that this city has to offer. That starts with contracting. We have to make certain that we respect affirmative action. Affirmative action is a means of nullifying and proving past discrimination by mandating the inclusion of diverse groups, promoting outreach, and allowing the consideration of race, age, or gender as a means of achieving reasonable targets or goals. We haven't done that in the city of Chicago since Earl Washington left us. We have to make sure that everyone has an equal and fair opportunity to get a contract. So what do? We have to unbundle those contracts and make them smaller so that more people can compete. We have to provide rapid bonding and insurance so that more people can compete. We have to provide those people the opportunity to lease equipment rather than require they own equipment so that more people can compete. When more people can compete, they can hire their neighbors, their friends, and their families. And now we have economic development spreading from the top down and not people sitting at the bottom waiting for simple crumbs. We have to also make sure that we unify this city by promoting cultural diversity sensitivity amongst people of all ages, races, socioeconomic backgrounds, all religious persuasion, all sexual orientation, all physical and mental disabilities and limitations, because we have to recognize that none of us is any better than the rest of us. And when we accept one another as whole, as equals, then we begin to develop a city that's going to ensure that everyone enjoys the economic benefits that this city has to offer. Chicago's a tale of two cities.
Mr. Walls,
the rich versus
2
the
minutes.
poor.
We need more jobs in our neighborhoods, quite simply. The question is, how do you do that? There has been a focus for a long time on downtown. And I don't want to say to the detriment of the neighborhoods, but the neighborhoods have not gotten their fair share. People want to work. People want to work. But we don't have jobs in so many streets in our neighborhoods. I held a press conference about a month ago in Bronzeville on East 43rd Street at a coffee shop. 3 people work in that coffee shop. Right next to it, 5 people work in a sandwich shop. That's 8 jobs, which is good because most business in Chicago is small business. The problem was on either side of those 2 stores were vacant stores and vacant lots. And for years, nothing's been done about it. So what I say we do is take that land and if need be, give it away. Give it away to people to incent companies to come there. Small business, let them bring their jobs, let them pay taxes, that will also heal our budget, and give people an opportunity to work. I really believe that that's the crux of the problem, is that we have not used all of our skills. We haven't used TIF in the right way. We haven't focused on the neighborhoods. We need to make sure that people who want to work in all neighborhoods of our city are able to find a small business that might start a dry cleaner, another coffee shop, a shoe store, whatever it is. We should give them money to build out that store and write the rent down if we have to, so they'll come to neighborhoods, 43rd, 47th, 51st, then going up north. Too many of our neighborhoods are missing out on the action. And this has been going on for decades. We've been driving by vacant lots, vacant stores. It's got to stop. And it's only going to stop when we muster the will to concentrate on solving the problem, using the assets that we have, free land, TIF, and giving people job opportunities in their very own neighborhoods.
I've built many coalitions across ethnic lines. I've moved policy around school reform, around criminal justice reform. I built coalitions across the city, across the state. I've marched with immigrants. I've worked to improve our schools. And I've done all of that because I understand the condition of the black community. All these things that we've heard here today will not heal the black community. 55% of the adult black males in Chicago have felony records. That means they cannot work. They can't get into schools. They can't get into housing. Not for a week, not for a month, not for 3 years, but for the rest of their lives. There's no way out. It's a cycle that keeps us in a state of poverty. And if we're going to muster some will around here, I think we need to muster the will to do right by the black community. And that means removing barriers to employment and stop acting like black folks are the only ones that commit crimes. Measures in our schools. We're using arrest when we should be using restorative justice. We should be building our kids up, supporting families staying together instead of forcing the separation of families. We have to understand that we cannot cure a drug habit by warehousing people in prison. And acknowledge the fact that we have hundreds of thousands of African Americans and other people of other ethnicities roaming our streets who cannot get back into mainstream society. Until we're ready to own that as a city and own it as a country, we will never have safe communities. We will never see the black community built. We'll never see the families standing up. We can't even establish norms in our neighborhood because of the mobility, the cycle of coming in and out.
Ms. Van Watkins, 2 minutes. Mr. Manuel?
One, TIFs. They've been, original purpose was blighted communities. They have migrated to high rent areas. And the TIFs have to be returned to their original purpose. That's number one. Number two, because we focused on not making sure the resources are used for high rent areas. Number two, dealing with the food desert issue. 600,000 people here in the city of Chicago do not have access to fresh fruits and vegetables. And I've talked about convening a meeting of all the major grocers, big box, and family stores, as well as dealing with urban agriculture, so you can make sure that people, the 600,000 plus others, not only have access to fresh fruits and vegetables, but it hires people locally and creates local economic development. Third, you can't ask people to participate in the economy, wherever it is, if your transportation system does not allow them to get there, which is why I talk about expanding the red line, modernizing, and expanding it from 96 to 100. Fourth, we need a comprehensive approach to the balkanized job training and education programs we have. From our community colleges to our federal, state, and local job training dollars, they are too dispersed, not organized, and not targeted towards the future industries and economies and businesses that will be establishing. From local businesses in retail areas that hire locally, build locally, to making TIF dollars focused there, to transportation systems that allows people to get to where the jobs are. Fourth, having the skill set that is also allows them to enter into the economy that is growing and having it focused. Each one of those are part and parcel of an economic strategy, not only of making sure jobs are there locally, but the people have the skill set to go to also where the jobs are.
And we'd like to bring to